Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and I'm joined as ever by my good friend and colleague, Steve Wyss. We are here to talk about a lot this week. We're in a good rhythm of things at the moment. We're in a good little flow. We've had a few episodes in a row, and of course, last week we talked about Molde, Granada, and we're going to discuss that game now. So, without further ado, Steve, how are you today?
Now then, J-Dog, how you doing? I'm all right. Ticking along, as they say. A bit disappointed about the Europa League result for Molde. We're going to talk about that very soon. But apart from that, I'm doing fine, and I hope you're in good health yourself.
Spring is coming. The days are getting a bit brighter. Still a bit windy over here, but it's, things are looking up, and I'm feeling pretty good because we're only about 3 or 4 weeks away from the new season in Sweden beginning. So, to be honest, it's kind of creeping up quite quickly, and before you know it, it will be upon us. I've just yesterday, renewed the Allsvenskan Nordic Football Podcast Fantasy League. So I might drop the code on that at the end of this episode, but it's there, it's ready. I've done my team, so things are really starting to sort of take shape. I've started my spreadsheets, but we're going to start in Norway before we move to Sweden, because as we did mention, there's been a massive game. It's probably one of the biggest games of the season, and it's been involving Molde, hasn't it, Steve? You were our man following that game against Granada in the Europa League, the last 16. Give us a quick recap of that match and your impressions.
Yeah, it ended Granada 2, Molde 0. And I was disappointed about this match for Molde, really. Unfortunately, pretty much everything you said about Granada in the last episode was very accurate, Jonathan. They're not a great watch, actually, are they? They're a frustrating team. I don't think they're actually that great, but at the same time, they have enough qualities to see them through. It's kind of. I remember you always said when they played Malmo in the qualifiers for this that they tended to have kind of the experience and everything that got them over the line. And it's kind of strange. This is that debut European campaign, isn't it? And I'm thinking, I don't think that is necessarily a great strength of theirs. But and I think that's where actually Hoffenheim, it let Hoffenheim down. They didn't have great experience of certainly two-legged ties. But it feels like with Granada's makeup of their team, they've got a lot of old heads there, like Molina, Soldado, and just they had that little bit of extra sort of intelligence when it mattered. I was disappointed though, because I think Molde on another day, had they kind of made the most of their good moments, certainly at the very least could have come out of the match with an away goal. 2-0 down, it feels like it's quite a big mountain to climb when you don't get an away goal.
Yes, quite a wily sort of team, aren't they? I think they have a young manager, so it's not as if he's even necessarily, that experienced. But I guess he's been at Sevilla as a youth coach, so maybe he's learned a lot from Europa League campaigns there. Watching on, he's been an assistant at Sevilla, so yeah, a bit of a dogged side, aren't they? I mean, from Molde's point of view, would they be disappointed with that result? Was it kind of expected? Did they, was the flow of the game as you imagined?
The first 10 minutes, Granada dominated it, and I think Molde's rustiness showed. They kind of got away with it, though. And then they got a foothold in the game, and I'm thinking, you know what, they're looking like the most likely team to score. But Granada don't really play like how a Spanish side is traditionally portrayed. They're quite direct team, Jonathan. They're not long ball direct, but they're looking to play a lot of long passes and sort of getting in behind sort of thing. And I didn't expect that. You think of Spanish side, you think sort of short passing, very technically correct sort of thing, patient sometimes. But when they want to get the ball forward, they did it quite quickly. And like Kennedy was causing big problems for Molde with some of his runs in the first half. And he was a real live wire. His finishing's not great, but he was whipping balls in. He was getting into positions that were causing issues. Then they got the goal. There was unfortunately a mistake from Sheriff Sinian, who he had a great performance against Hoffenheim, but he didn't have such a good game here in Granada. He was exposed by. They had a good game plan to beat Molde out. Basically, they exposed certain guys one-on-one, and that was 1-0. I was surprised that Sinjan was in the team despite his good performance against Hoffenheim. I thought Martin Bjørnbæk would come back in. I would have rather had Bjørnbæk in there myself. But Molde had dangerous moments. They had, especially out wide. Pedersen was really good, I felt, apart from his final ball. They created opportunities and good situations, but didn't make the most of it. And Granada just kind of picked them off, really.
Yeah, Granada, it's kind of a bit like I said in the Malmo game, they're very direct. They're 8th in La Liga, but they actually got the 4th lowest ball possession in the league, 42% average ball possession, which is really quite poor. They're not the sort of team that wants to play the ball and kind of play tiki-taka football, are they? Really, they haven't got the best defensive record, but they're quite dogged. They've got the second highest number of blocked shots in La Liga. They're that kind of team, aren't they? Really, 5th in the league for interceptions. They're sort of like you've said, a dogged team. What are the prospects for the second leg then? Are we looking at this as something that Molde could probably turn around, or is it going to be quite difficult?
Well, Martin Ellingson will not be playing the second leg. He got sent off for a second bookable offence. And unfortunately, within 5 or 10 minutes of him getting sent off, Roberto Soldado got the second goal. It was a bit of an unlucky moment, I felt, for Molde. It was a really good volley from Soldado. Andreas Linde, who's done brilliantly in these last few matches, he lets it go because he thinks it's going to go wide of the post. And it kind of dips in at the last minute, hits the post, and comes in and goes in the goal. And Linda will come under some criticism for this because, some will say you got to rather be safe than sorry. But I get where he's coming from. He doesn't want to give the corner away. And it did look like it was going to go for a goal kick until this last sort of minute dip. But I feel that 2-0 goal could be crucial in the tie. Molde's really only chance for me is if they win the second leg 2-0 exactly. I can't see Molde scoring 4 goals in one match against Granada, which they'd need if Granada score an away goal. So their only hope for me is to get that 2-0, take it to extra time, which is absolute bollocks, isn't it? Because they'll get another 30 minutes Granada to score an away goal. Should go straight to penalties, in my opinion. But remember, the match is going to be played in Hungary at the Puskás Arena. So they don't even have home advantage, Molde. But, look, they created some good moments. They got in behind. I think you're right about the blocks. It felt like Granada were always there, when that second loose ball kind of fell to someone in the box, there was always someone there for Granada to clear it or get in the way of it. And I feel like it's just a bad matchup for Molde. But if they get a goal early on, you never know. They weren't massively outplayed. I felt like Hoffenheim outplayed them far greater than Granada, for example. Yeah,
and comments from Diego Martinez. He said, "This is the last 16 of the Europa League. It's taken us 90 years to get to this moment, and it's been very difficult. The team passed with flying colours today. The context and circumstances make this a tremendous win." And a Spanish newspaper called Ideal paid tribute to Molina and Soldado, saying they have goals in their blood, which is a nice description. And Granada Oy pointed out that the average age, the combined age, of Molina and Soldado, the goal scorers, is 73. So it really was a veterans day out, veterans ball. And the top marks in terms of the match were, from a Spanish point of view, were given to Kennedy, Soldado, and Eteki. They got the highest ratings, and Molina as well. And the highest ratings for Molde in that same match report were for Magnus Wolff Eikram and Pedersen. So, there's quite a few actually negative ratings for some of their players as well. Sinjan and, Gregerson, I think, got 1 star, for example.
Sinjan had a bad game, sadly.
Yeah, so, it looks like it was a 4-3-3 for Molde against the 4-2-3-1. What are you expecting in the second leg? And do you have any sort of, predicted lineups if we're looking at this game in a few days' time, people listening? What can they expect to see from Molde to try and mix this up a bit?
Well, Molde will always play 4-2-3-1 under Lingmo. Nothing changes there. They're not going to suddenly go to a back 5 or a 3-4-3. It's just not going to happen. There'll be 4-2-3-1. I think Martin Ellingson will come out of the side because he's suspended. I would imagine probably Etsaz Hussein will come and replace him in the middle of the park. I would expect Sinjan to be dropped for Martin Bjørnbak to come in. Look, I don't want to be slamming. I don't want to slam Sinjan here, by the way, because he has shown some very good promise in the last calendar year. It was probably a bit too much to ask for someone to go, yeah, this is the last 16 of a European match, and you expose one-on-one. It's going to happen sometimes. A mistake will happen. So I hope Sinjan can rebound from that. In the attacking third, I'm not sure Sigurdsson's the man for Molde. He's like a target man. He's nowhere near the level of Lecky James or Ui or Mwamfo. I would honestly give the young Ivorian David Diatro Fofana a go up front, because at least he's got the pace and a bit of flair and the skill that maybe something unusual could happen. You know, expect the unexpected with him. I'd give him a go. Let him off the leash right from the first whistle, really. So I'd like to see him change. I think apart from that, there's not really much else they can do. Mattis Bolli, I wouldn't get him anywhere near the team. I don't rate him at all. I really think he constantly makes the worst decisions when he's in the final third. We were talking off air about Adama Traore at Wolves tonight, and he's a similar sort of player. So I think keep him on the bench and don't bring him on. I just don't see what he offers. So I'd stick with Arik Andersen and probably Hestad. Maybe Knutsen could be an option for Molde. But yeah, get the young Ivorian in the team. Martin Bjørnbak at the back gives them more of a chance of a clean sheet. And if Pedersen can get them crosses in and a bit more accurate this time, then get an early goal, you never know. Put a bit of pressure on Granada. Granada are welcoming back quite a few players, I think, though, Jonathan. So it'll be a different lineup for them. And maybe Molde missed a boat the first leg when they had so many absentees. But they're an old team, so let's use some pace against them, you know. Try and use some Molde strength against perhaps some problems that Granada might encounter.
Do you have a predicted sort of 11?
Yeah, I think Andreas Linde will start in goal. Haugen at left back, Gregerson. I think it'll be Martin Bjørnbak partnering Gregerson. Pedersen at right back, obviously. Orsnes along with Etzaz Hussein. Magnus Wolf Eikrem goes without saying. Hestad on the right wing. Arik Andersen, and I do think it will probably be Sigurdsson up front, to be honest. But I would love to see the young Ivorian. I've not actually checked, to be honest, if there is a suspension. Suspensions can be quite harsh, can't they? In Europe, I will have a quick look there, but I think they're all right for suspensions, from what I'm aware of. Yeah, there's no suspended players, so it looks like Granada is still missing quite a few to injury, but they don't have any bans for the second leg themselves.
Yeah, and the game is being played in Budapest, so I think you did mention that, right? Or I think you said it was going to be played in Norway. Yeah,
Budapest. Yeah,
it's being played in Budapest. Yeah, okay. And the last game was played where? In Spain.
In Granada. Yeah, in Granada. Yeah, it's. I mean, you're going to ask me for a prediction, aren't you? So I might as well just do it now. I think the second leg is going to end in a 1-1 draw.
Fair enough. You know, you're always quite concise with your predictions, and often you're not too far wrong. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And also, congratulations to Stian Gregersen, who's been named in the Norway national team squad for their upcoming World Cup qualifiers, which we played at the end of March against Gibraltar, Turkey, and Montenegro. And he is joining a lot of former Molde players: Erling Braut Haaland, Matthias Norman, Mats Moller Daly, Moyel Ginusi, Martin Linnes, Ruben Gabrielsen, and Leo Ostergaard. I think have all been in squads in the past or are in the squad. So good luck to him. And let's move on because, I mean, that is going to be a big game, of course, and it's on Thursday. Let's see if Molde can pull off the impossible. We wish them the best of luck. Martin Ellingson is suspended. And, yeah, I think if Fredrik Orsnes is booked, he'll miss the next leg, and Berk Rieser as well, but they're available. So should be an interesting game, 5 to 6 UK time on Thursday for a place in the Europa League quarterfinals.
Yeah, so we're going to move on now to Swedish matters, and we're going to start with the Swedish Cup because now we've had the quarterfinal matches. Give us a roundup of what's the latest situation there, Jonathan.
Yes, Swedish Cup indeed. So we talked about it last week. We talked about the quarterfinals, and you managed to get me off the fence with my predictions. And I'm pretty happy to say, Steve, that my predictions well, bar one of them, came true. Of course, one game was postponed, Hammarby Trelleborg, because of COVID. There's been a round of cases in Hammarby's squad, so that game has been moved. But we did have 3 of the 4 quarterfinals. IFK Norrköping against BK Häcken, Degerfors, Västerås, and Djurgården Östersunds. First, the first game there to talk about Djurgården Östersunds, a very comfortable win for Djurgården, 3-0. Kalle Holmberg, Edward Chilufya, and Niklas Barkroth. Pretty straightforward victory there. Djurgården looking quite good. Östersunds, going to be a tough season for them, it seems. Obviously, with the transfer ban, not really been allowed to bring in any players, and it is looking like maybe a precursor to tough times, although they've done well to qualify from the group, but Djurgården really had too much for them. The big shock, really, I guess it could be called a shock anyway, is in the Degerfors Västerås game, because Västerås have emerged and beaten the new Allsvenskan team. Obviously, Degerfors newly promoted, but they lost after extra time, so it did go to extra time, and it was a very eventful game, 4-3. So Västerås moved to the semi-finals, which is
this looked crazy. This game, I had a look at the scores, and Degerfors actually led with 2 minutes to go, and then Västerås missed a penalty in the 87th minute, and then scored 2 minutes afterwards to equalise, to take it to extra time. It was 2-2 after full time, and then there was goals in extra time that won them the game 4-3. And remember, they were the underdogs here. 4-1 shot actually with the bookmakers, over 90 minutes anyway. So a fair shock. There's one site here that suggests that the semi-final lineup is already drawn against Häcken. I don't know how true that is. It might just, sometimes sites do that when teams progress.
No, that's correct. That's correct. The semi-finals are already done, so it will be BK Häcken. They are the other team that made it through, and this was a really, really good game. This is the one game I watched. I really enjoyed it, actually. Häcken coming out 4-3 victors against Norrköping. 2 teams who are sort of slightly new look. Both of them had really a whole new lineup. To be honest, and Norrköping had a slightly new sort of shape as well about them under Rickard Norling. I think they're going to be 2 very interesting teams to follow this season for various reasons. Obviously partly because of the new manager at Norrköping, and partly because Häcken have really regenerated their squad. They got a lot of transfers in and out. So we're going to see big changes from their point of view. I think 17 players have come on left. So yes, it's going to be. I think they've brought in 12 and 17 have left, if I'm right in saying. Could be wrong, but amongst the players who've departed, Leonard Zutter, who's gone to Lecce, Kevin Jakob, Adam Anderson, Imam Yanya. We talked about this is obviously over the past year or so, but Söderlund's left now. He's gone to Turkey. So they've had quite a few departures over the last year, and in the meantime, they've brought in quite a lot of players. Häcken. Alexander Yeremiev is back from Dynamo Dresden. He was on the score sheet. Scored a nice goal. Martin Olsen has come in from Helsingborg. There's a left back who played at the weekend, Valgeir Fredriksson. He's a young player from Valur. Tobias Heinz has come in from Turkey. So Pontus Darberg's back on loan. They've got a young player called Benny Traore, who I'm really looking forward to watching because he scored in that game from ASEC Mimosas in Ivory Coast. So it's a really new look, BK Häcken, and it lent for a really, really good game. It flowed really well. There was goals at either end. Norrköping took the lead through their young talent by the name of Abdul Razak. And yeah, so it was, like I say, it was up and down. A game I really enjoyed watching, to be honest. And was Ali Benro actually?
I'm just looking at the actual score. 3-2 at Häcken, and Samuel Adegbenro, 10th minute, officially listed as the first goal scorer here. Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong. I'm getting the two mixed up. But Adegbenro scored. It was a tap in. He's at Bergman Johannesson with a pinpoint pass. It was a brilliant ball to create the first goal. It was a really, really open game at this point. Then about 10 minutes later, Yeremiev scored. It was a long punt downfield from Pontus Darberg, who I'm shocked he's still in Allsvenskan, to be honest. Watford haven't really integrated him into their squad yet. He played a long punt upfield, and Yeremiev was onto it against the young centre-back. Bit of a mistake, really, from Norrköping's young centre-back, Theodor Rask. Then Haksabanovic
went up the other end and scored in the 33rd minute. So, then it was 2-1. Like I say, really, really open game. Then Benny Traore, but it was Tobias Heinz who scored the winning goal for Norrköping for Häcken to take the win. Like I said, this was two teams who, I'm sure you'll ask me about them, Steve, but they're both of them are looking quite different in how they're approaching the new season.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this score sheet here, and there's some good players, on both sides. I mean, Tobias Heinz is someone I'd certainly rate from seeing him in Norway. Haskabanovic on the score sheet. I mean, there's guys here that you're thinking, well, they have moved abroad to supposedly better pastures. It hasn't quite worked out, but they've come back. But these guys are quality players, and I'm interested. It sounds like there's positives from both teams going into the season at this point in time. Häcken obviously into the semi-final. You'd expect them to beat Västerås, so it's looking good for them in the cup. But in terms of the longer term prognosis, the formations are very different as well. I mean, we talked about Norling coming in, and is he going to transform the side completely?
Yeah, so I know you've mentioned sort of doing a couple of team analysis on this pod, maybe brief team overviews, and I think I'll do a similar thing with based on this game. So, sort of I wouldn't call it a match analysis, but maybe a brief match analysis. So Norrköping went into the game, as I mentioned, with a 3-4-3 really formation. You could call it a 5-2-3, but I'd probably say more of a 3-4-3. Really new look at the back. They've got Theodore Rask, as I mentioned, who's sort of 21 years old. We'll talk more about the team in general as we go along, but they had a few other players. Marco Lund, he played centre back. Of course, they've lost a lot of players, haven't they, Norrköping? So it's a really new look set up there. So they had sort of the three centre backs, if you will. Then they had sort of a 4 in midfield, and consisting of obviously Wahlqvist is a sort of right-sided centre back. He can obviously play as a right back as well. They got Castellgren on one side as a wing back, Victor Gardius on the other side, and then midfield two of Bergman Johannesson, of course, the youngster who we talked about last season in such detail, the teenager, and Alexander Fransson. And then up front, they got Ishak Abdul Razak on one side, Haksabanovic on the other, and Adek Benro up front. And as I say, it's a really nice blend. Obviously, Oscar Janssen in goal as well. He's a new signing from Örebro. He was obviously in our team of the season, wasn't he? Steve combined. He was a goalkeeper of the season. Made a bit of a rick for Jeremyev's goal, to be honest. And although I like Janssen, I still have a question mark. Is it a bit of a downgrade to Isak Pettersson? But time will tell on that one. Nice 3-4-3. Norling is been quite happy in pre-season with how things are going. But I think there's obviously it's still a work in progress, a lot to go. And, they were a little bit unlucky to a certain extent because they did offer good value in this match. But, in the end, they didn't win. Häcken on the other side, of course, are slightly more settled in terms of manager. Andreas Alm's been there a while now, and he's going into, I think, his third or fourth season. But again, they're sort of fairly new look. They've lost quite a few players, and they're still integrating some players. Some players have obviously still injured. Elo Hirndust as one, but they had Toivio right back, Hammer and Lindgren in centre back positions. The new player Fredriksson, as I said, from Valur. Now he looks to me like a right-footed player, but he was playing left back. He actually got an assist for one of the goals. Looked okay, looked promising, but I think he did look to me heavily right-footed. So I don't know if that's his position.
Inverted wing back.
Yeah, so we'll see where he, if that's his long-term position there. But he played pretty well. Friberg and Berggren, continue to be in the centre midfield. And then they got the sort of 4-2-3-1 with Tobias Heinz, Leo Bengtsson, who I've talked about on this podcast before. I like him, former Hammarby youth player. And this new lad, Benny Traore, who we'll talk about maybe in weeks to come. He looked exciting to me. I liked what I saw of him. Could be a sort of a new Nasiru Mohammed for Beko Häcken fans who remember him. A bit of a flying winger, and he scored a decent goal. And then, of course, Jeremyev is back up front. So, it's kind of, out with the new and in with the old, really, isn't it? It's sort of the reverse with Jeremyev going back to pastures new and Söderlund leaving. So, I think continuity is helping them in the sense of the manager. But obviously, it's a lot of change, isn't it? The former sporting director who we've had on this podcast has left, Sonny Carlson. He's kind of now taken a back seat. So the recruitment is going in a slightly different direction. And, they had quite a bit of inexperience on the bench. Obviously, Jack Lane was on the bench, and they've got a few players who are sort of 17, 18 on the bench. So, yeah, like I said, I think these are going to be two teams to watch this season. I think both of them are interesting projects. And certainly from my point of view, covering the league, they're going to be two teams I'm quite excited to keep an eye on as we go on in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Rikard Norling, obviously ex-ICOR, ex-Brann as well back in the day. He's always been this sort of three centre-backs. He can't get away from it, it seems. That's his way. And, I mean, I remember watching that AEK team, and it was just, to be blunt, quite boring. And very effective, don't get me wrong. And you've got to respect that. But that's my concern. I mean, if I was to ask the question to neutrals listening here for the first time, which teams should you sort of support potentially in Sweden? I mean, give me a sell on Norrköping, on Norling. Are they going to be as boring as IEK, or is there a bit more sort of zest in there now? They've got players like Adding Benro. He's an exciting player. Haskabanovic, there's quality in there. Is it going to be more exciting this time for Rikard Norling?
I think some of it will depend on which players they keep and which players they don't keep. For example, Haksabanovic has been strongly linked with a move. I think he's been rumoured to be going to MLS at one point. I don't know if that will happen. I think New York Red Bulls have been closely following him. We will see how that goes. Because I think, for example, they've got a nice focal point there with Adding Benro. Really keen to see how he does in Allsvenskan. I'm quite excited to watch him. I think that's I'm really happy he's in Allsvenskan, to be honest, because he's a player I admired when he was at Rosenborg, and I think having him over this side of the world, I probably wouldn't have expected his career to end up at Norrköping at this stage. Thought maybe he could go a bit higher, but I know he's had his injury problems. I think this will be a nice launch point for him to maybe kick off again. So we will see. In terms of the way Norling tries to take his team, that's going to be something that we're going to have to figure out, because, as you've mentioned, that AIK title-winning team was based on steel at the back really and grinding out results. Now, I'm not entirely sure they have the defensive capabilities to really do that this time around. I thought the young lad Theodore Rask, he's only 21, 20, and I was a bit, I thought he looked quite promising at the beginning of the match, but he made one or two mistakes and showed his inexperience, particularly with the opening goal for Häcken. So I'm not entirely sure really if he'll be first choice. I think a lot of things will be dictated in the next sort of 4 weeks of the transfer window. Kastegren I quite like. Lund is a new signing. We'll see how he gets along. Didn't really have an opinion on him either way based on what I saw in that game. They've also brought in a young player called Finnur Thomas Palmerson, which we'll talk about. So they've got, like I say, quite a lot of new players. Agardius has come in from Mjällby. So, he's quite a solid player. He's quite experienced. I think he's going to be quite a fairly decent pickup. But I really think much will depend on which players they keep and which players they don't. Don't forget, they've still got Christopher Niemann up front as well, who was the top scorer last season in Allsvenskan. But I think Norling, he will try and tighten the team up a bit. But there's players like Ishak Abdul Razak as well, who's only 18 last season. He didn't play that much. He'll now come into a bit more now that they've had a lot of players leaving. The likes of Amfis leaving, Simon Tern leaving, Dargestal leaving. So it's going to open up a lot of positions. I think Dargestal leaving is a big blow for in terms of centre backs and the back line, because I think Norling would have liked to have kept someone like him, especially with Rasmus Lauritsen having already left 6 months earlier. I think he'll try and tighten things up, but the thing with Norrköping is it is going to be quite a new look side, and I think you can look at that as an encouraging really. We did talk about it, Steve, in the past. They really, I think last year was their year to win the title, to be honest, and having made such a great start, and they really did blow it. And things have kind of unraveled from there. It's really, really fallen apart, to be honest. But, I saw some encouraging signs in this game, but I think the one thing that obviously probably will worry them is their inability to get the job done. Once again, they had spells in the game where they looked good, but it was Häcken who came away with the victory. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. But certainly, as I said, I'll be keeping a close eye on them, because I do like some of their transfers. I do like Norling in general, and I do think it's interesting times ahead.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And I'm going to move over to Häcken now, and I'm going to ask you a question which, to be honest, we might need half a podcast to actually answer it. So it'd be as brief as you could be. But which, again, if you're listening and you're after a new club to support in Sweden, which of the Gotham-based clubs should you go for? Because there's 4 or 5 options, I believe. In the Allsvenskan itself, it's pretty much Häcken or IFK Gothenburg. Now, just tell me a few real positive points about Häcken as a club themselves, because they always appeal to me personally in terms of the youth aspect and stuff like that.
If I'm going to sell you BK Häcken, the first question I'd say is, have you ever been to a football stadium and been given free popcorn?
I can't say I ever have been, no.
Have you ever been to a football stadium and been able to sit on a couch and play FIFA?
No. Now, you've told me this before, like there's kids' entertainment and stuff. Now, I could certainly go for that.
Well, there you go then. I mean, if that's your thing, and if you've ever been to a football stadium and seen a bee mascot walking around offering popcorn to people, then BK Häcken is your club. A really sort of family atmosphere. It's a small stadium. It's only about 6,000 capacity, 7,000 capacity. I think that it's a kind of a family club based in Hisingen. So Gothenburg has different parts to it, and Hisingen is kind of like a district. You cross the bridge. I used to live there across the bridge, and I've got fond memories. Steve, I've gone teary-eyed on this podcast before. Sort of wispy-eyed or whatever, talking about it, reminiscing. You cross that Gothenburg bridge, and it's a beautiful sight. And you get to the other side of the dock into Hisingen, and you cross the docks, and it's IFK are the establishment club of Gothenburg. They're the big boys. They're the historical giants of Gothenburg. BK Häcken they're the upstarts basically. They're the bees. They're swarming around in their little part of Hisingen. And it gets looked down upon a little bit, but it's its own little part of the city, secluded away there, and they're kind of the rebels basically. They like to think of themselves as the rebels anyway. IFK fans may think they're the rebels, but they're the unofficial club basically. You got, obviously, don't forget, you got Örgryte as well, are a massive club in Gothenburg. They've fallen on hard times, but they also won a lot of championships, way more than Häcken. They're up there with Gothenburg and IFK in terms of most successful teams in Sweden historically. And you've also got Gais, who are very well supported as well, have a proud history. But BK Häcken are the upstarts. They're the young team. A little bit taken longer to establish themselves. They've only been in the league, I think, not that long. It's only in the last decade or so they've started to come to prominence. And why is that? Partly because they've got a great academy, partly because they got the Gothia Cup, which is the worldwide youth tournament. And they are really the foundation of that. They get a lot of money from that as well, I think. That's enabled them to build their Gothia Park Academy. And that's allowed them a sort of a stable base to sort of build. And really it's through a lot of their own hard work and success. Sonny Carlson takes a lot of credit for that. Building that club. He was manager as well, then sporting director, building that vision. And they just gradually, year after year, they keep improving. They started winning a few cups. They won the Swedish Cup a few times. And, that's really given them that platform. And they are growing as a club. The accusation is, because they're quite a small team, you can walk around that stadium pretty quickly. You don't get that many fans. It's not like sort of Oikor or Hammarby with, 20,000 plus, or Djurgården, or even IFK Göteborg with their 18,000. The maximum capacity is about 6,000. You probably only really get about 3,000 or 4,000 at home games often, but they are passionate, and they are growing. So I think this season they've shown steady progress. If you look at their league finishes over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's gradually making progress. They tend to fall away a little bit. They don't quite get the job done to maybe make the top 3, top 2, but they are on the right trajectory, I think. So if you were looking to support a team, BK Häcken is certainly not a team to overlook, because they play good football. They always play quite nice, expansive football. They always integrate young academy players. They're always looking to bring in new talents and sell them on, the likes of Dalla Hören, as I mentioned, and many others they've sold on in the past. They have quite a sort of, I wouldn't say the philosophy is set in stone, but they tend to sort of break quickly. They tend to be maybe a bit of a counter-attacking side, especially at home. The pitch is very compact. They can break on teams very quickly. Vertical runners. That's why I think Bene Traore could be an interesting signing, because he looks like a strong, pacey winger who can get up and down the channels quickly. Jack Lane also fits that brief, maybe, if he can find his form. So, yes, they, like I say, I've lived very close to the stadium when I was living out there, so they have a soft spot in my heart, BK Häcken, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know probably deep down you're more of an Orgrite man, aren't you? But you have a fondness for Gothenburg football, full stop, don't you? All the teams there have a build. I mean, I think maybe I should go for someone like Gais. They don't seem to get much love these days, so they can maybe be the team that I keep my eye on from Gothenburg down there in the Super and I think Gais, are they? But yeah, it's an interesting area for sure for football. Big area of football and passionate. The fans are passionate.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't say Orgrite is my team. It's just I did a Football Manager save with them.
I know.
I wouldn't say I have any affiliation to Orgrite. I'd probably lean more towards the FK and Beko Häcken if I was choosing. Guys, I've been taken around the club. I quite like them as well. But if it was me putting my neck on the line, it'd be one of Beko or EFK. I think, to be honest, just based on my experiences and the people I met as well. I met some really good people at both clubs. Guys and Orgrite, I didn't meet as many people, so I kind of base it on my own experience. But I will say for sure, Stephen, when you talk about Gothenburg football, Guys and Orgrite are sleeping giants. They're both very well supported, and it is a kind of a nice FM save because both of those teams are kind of sleeping giants waiting to be woken up. And I always think to myself, if someone, if I was looking to work in football, for example, I wouldn't mind working for a Gais or a Orgrite because they've both got good academies as well. There's a lot of talent in Gothenburg, and like I say, they've got good fan bases. So they are teams that are kind of just fallen on hard times, but there are big clubs there to be reawakened.
Yeah, I mean, Gais actually play at Gamla Ullevi by all accounts on Wiki anyway. I mean,
stadium share, yeah.
I know they're historically fairly big as well, but yeah, well, good to hear your thoughts on that Swedish Cup game and some interesting stuff about Norrköping and Häcken. Two sides well worth people following if you're after a Swedish side for sure.
100%. But yeah, I mean, going back to the Swedish Cup, it will be, Häcken can't be ruled out. I think they could be considered, one of the favourites now. But I think Djurgården are looking strong, and we will talk about Stockholm clubs, I think, maybe in a future episode, because I think Djurgården are looking pretty good this season so far from what I've seen, and I think there's going to be a lot to talk about Djurgården in this coming campaign. So maybe we'll save that for another show. But yeah, the two semi-finals we played in Gothenburg and Stockholm. So it'll be Beko Häcken against Västerås on the 20th, and then the expected date for the other game is 21st. But with Hammarby's COVID cases, I'm not entirely sure when that's going to take place. But we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and after the interval, I'm going to give you a bit of talk about a couple of sides in Norway that you could perhaps a little bit of a guide that you can get your teeth into. So we'll see you in a little bit.
Welcome back to this episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. Hope you enjoyed a nice little break. By the way, I've been on the jasmine green tea tonight, so very nice, refreshing drink. And I also had a Magnum white chocolate ice cream, so I hope you had a little pause there as well and maybe got a refreshment. We're moving back to Norway now, and with the season being, with the build up to the 2021 season, we are doing a couple of teams in focus this week, as we've done with Norrköping and Häcken, just a brief focus. And so we're going to do the same in Norway now, starting with a team who is newly promoted and has been in a bit of a shadow of their title-winning rivals, Bodø Glimt, and that is Tromsø, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about a couple of teams, Tromsø and then Strømsgodset after that. But just before I do, when you said Magnum there, I thought you were going to say a Magnum of champagne. I was going to say, what are you celebrating? My old friend, I'm actually just drinking water tonight, plain old water. Trying to increase my water uptake in a fitness boost, mate. So
you're trying to keep healthy and fit, eh?
Yeah, you got to drink a certain amount of water per day and stuff like that. Helps, metabolism and everything. So something I've been working towards. But
good. Yeah, it's good to stay hydrated. So if you're listening to this, don't forget your hydration levels, and hopefully Steve's chat in this section won't make you too thirsty.
Yes.
Tromsø, I mean, what we're going to do with this is kind of a bit like what you've just asked me. what teams to follow, what teams should we be looking to support. If you're new maybe to the region and you're not entirely sure who these teams are, what's the good about them, what's not so good about them. So not necessarily tactical and analytical, but more of an overview, isn't it, Steve? So what's your reason for choosing Tromsø this week?
Well, first of all, I feel a little bit left out, by the way. The Eliteserien isn't starting until the start of May now. So I would be talking about these teams in the season preview that we usually do, and there still will be that. Back end of April, I'm sure we'll be well in detail. But I feel like I need to discuss about certain teams in the next few episodes before then, give people listening a chance to sort of build some relationships with clubs and get a feel for clubs. And I've seen Tromsø mentioned a lot this week in season predictions already, a lot of fantasy talk and stuff. And I've seen a lot of people predict them in the bottom three. And I can see that, but this is a club that I really feel needs to progress and become sort of a regular in the Eliteserien again and not be flirting with relegation. I mean, I kind of have a little bit of sympathy for Tromsø fans last year because they won their league, but massively overshadowed by their northern rivals, Bodø/Glimt, who before last season, Tromsø, the only side in that northern region, actually had won major silverware. Tromsø won the Norwegian Cup before. They reached the Cup Winners' Cup quarterfinals in 1997. 2 times Norwegian Cup winners, 96 and 86. So, the history was there. They're the world's northernmost professional football team. I mean, that's an incredible statistic in itself. So if you're listening and want something quirky, a team to follow in that sort of way, then that's a really interesting thing. They're coming up. They won the Obos League on 63 points after I would call it a bit of a shock relegation when Simo Valikari were in charge. They regularly play matches at home in the snow, and certainly at the start of seasons and towards the end of it, there can be crazy scenes in the stadium at Alfheim Stadium where they're used to very cold temperatures. I just saw a tweet recently saying that they can train outside in a stadium again for the first time this year because it's so brutal. This is well inside the Arctic Circle, so they're a bit of a quirky club in terms of that. Hardened fans, you often get some bare-chested guys out there in the middle of winter strutting their stuff in the stands. But in summer, when the sun's shining, it can be quite a nice place as well. So, there's a lot of sort of different quirky factors that just come up. They've got a new manager I'm going to talk about in a minute since they were last in Eliteserien.
Yeah, before you talk about him, let's just give a quick overview if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So they were founded in 1920, so it was their 100-year anniversary this year just gone. And to celebrate that, they won, obviously, as you say, the Obos League game. So that was a nice little celebration. But they've never won the Eliteserien. So they've been beaten to that honour by Bodø/Glimt, haven't they? And it's been an up and down sort of few years for them, hasn't it? Really. Won the Norwegian Cup twice, as you mentioned, 86 and 96. If you were looking to compare them to a team, what's their level in terms of, their overall standing in Norway? Are they well respected? Are they a bit of a plucky underdog? How would you compare them to, say, maybe a European team or an English team in the Premier League or that kind of thing?
That's a very good question, actually. I think they will always be respected because, teams up in the north there, just to get professional football playing at such a high level, fair play, because they're not the most attractive places to play. So you need your own sort of youth academy. You're going to get a lot of players locally. There's another club up there called Tromsø, whom they tend to, they've got players from there before as well. Big rivalry with Bodø/Glimt. So if you want to take on the current champions and sort of be anti-Bodø/Glimt, then Tromsø's your club for sure. And it will hurt. Their fans will be hurting to see Bodø/Glimt win that league. I remember we actually had an interview with their old manager, Simo Valikari, and one of the questions I asked him, he lost them twice that season, and he said he can't show your face for the next week because it's bitter and it hurts them. In terms of a comparison, they're quite a long way away from sort of the main centre parts of Norway. So you're looking for if it was Premier League terms, you're looking for a club that's quite far away. There's not too many examples of it. Newcastle, perhaps, something like that, but not as big, if you know what I mean. They're kind of in their own world with a lot of things. They're quite unique in that sort of way. So Sunderland, yeah, could be, but yeah, falling a bit hard times. Yeah, that's a very good comparison. Yeah, Sunderland probably better example than Newcastle. Yeah, fallen a bit on harder times recently. Obviously, it's good for them that they're back in the league, but it's almost, if you 2 or 3 years ago, you'd have said they're the better prospect than Bode Glimt. You know what I mean? They had the manager that had come in who was playing nice football, historically the bigger club. Things were kind of looking up, and it's amazing what's changed in 2 or 3 years, really.
If we look at sort of like their prospects in terms of the season ahead, obviously they're newly promoted, but they are kind of, regulars in the Eliteserien. And the manager, Gaute Helstrup, is a 44-year-old manager. He's got a contract to the end of this season. Have they recruited well so far? Is the squad good enough to compete as it is from Obos? Or do you worry for them at this stage? I mean, it is early still, but who are the key men? Who should we look out for? What are the reasons to get excited about this Sunderland of the Eliteserien?
Yeah, Gaute Helstrup, he's an ex-player of Tromsø. He actually played a lot of years at Tromsdalen as well, so he knows the area very well, a local sort of guy who knows he probably can have very good chemistry with the fans. He actually had a season managing a team called HamKam. What a great name for a club. HamKam is, he had one good season there, and that's why Tromsø brought him in after getting rid of Simo Valakari. Won the league, and he played every match last year with using a 3-5-2 flat formation. So that's what you're going to see from them again, I would imagine. 3 centre-backs, and then sort of either wing-backs or wide mids, whatever you want to call them, and then a couple of sort of strikers or attackers. And one of the criticisms I've seen so far on Twitter is they've not recruited enough. And I kind of get that. They've only brought in a couple of lads. One of the guys, Kasper Ovian from Tromsdalen, for example, not really any Eliteserien experience. They brought in a guy, left wing back, Thomas Totland from Sogndal. I don't know enough about him. And Moses Abiy, ex Lillestrøm. Yeah, they probably need to do a bit more reinforcement. They've got some interesting players, though. They've got Eric Kitolano, one of the brothers of John Kitolano at Odd, and there's a couple of other Kitolanos floating around as well. They're like rabbits in Norway. They've got Rune Espejord, who when he's fit, is sensational striker, but unfortunately he's made out of cotton wool. Mikael Ingebrigtsen's there. They've got experienced guys like Ruben Jensen in midfield, Antonsson. And then, they've got kind of veteran centre-backs who are perhaps a bit too slow sometimes at this level. But, you're going to see 3-5-2. I think you're going to see a decent sort of team on the eye. And I think they're lacking a bit in midfield, certainly, Jonathan. I'll be honest. I think that's my big concern about Tromsø. But one of the big problems they had under Simo Valakari, historically, Tromsø are a very good home team, right? Massive home advantage. No one likes going up there, etc., etc. But I think Simo Valakari was such a pass-hungry coach that it didn't suit them in a lot of matches where the elements and the weather went against them. They were better away from home than at home. And I just wonder now whether they might have solved that, because last year they were very dominant in front of their own fans. Alfheim, 12 wins out of 15, 2 draws and 1 defeat. And that is just historically Tromsø in a nutshell. They've got to get that home advantage and retain that home advantage. And I just wonder under this coach, Gaute Helstrup, maybe they'll be better suited to that. So that's a big part of their game. And make it a fortress that no one wants to go to again.
Sure. And how's our man Mikael Ingebrigtsen getting on? I mean, he came to the IFK, didn't he? And it didn't really work out for him. He was one of your players to watch at one point, wasn't
he? Yeah, and it just flopped, didn't it? I mean, last season, we look at his stats last season, 14 appearances, 14 starts, 9 off the bench, 7 goals and 1 assist. I mean, I didn't watch him in the Tromsø last year, but it looks like half the time he was used as a bench weapon, which is quite worrying. It's Obos Ligaen level, but I know this guy's got ability. He's, a technically fast player. He can play in any sort of midfield attacking role. And, if he stays fit, I think he can definitely cause problems at Eliteserien level. Rune Espejord's a great striker. This is a club that has the potential to certainly become an established Eliteserien side again. And it's a big year for them, though, because they can't, if they were to go down again, they'd be massively like yo-yo. And that is, for me, just too you can't. They want to avoid becoming like the West Brom of Norway. You know, they need to get themselves established again and kick on. And maybe Budiglimp's success might just drive them forward and give them extra motivation. But interesting club to follow if you're after a club. They're not your bog standard boring sort of side. They're in an interesting geographical place and a bit quirkiness about them.
The Sunderland of Norway, according to Meatman Soccer Steve Wyss. Send us a tweet if you agree or disagree at Nordic Football. And it's an interesting analysis of them. And, certainly a team who have something about them and could be one to follow for this coming season if you're looking for a team to support. Let's move on because there's another team we're going to talk about on this show. It's a little overview of a few teams as we sort of slowly wind our way back towards the new season in 2021. And you've chosen Strømsgodset for this one, haven't you, Steve?
Yeah, I have. And they're another team I'm seeing a lot of people predict them quite low in the table. And I kind of get that. The last 2 years, they've needed to win pretty much the last couple of matches or two very late games in the year just to stay up. So I can get that. But I feel like this is a club with great potential again. We've actually had 2 league wins in their history. The most recent of which came in 2013, runners up in 2012 and 2015 as well. So around that period, they were kind of the team knocking on the door to like Molde, Rosenborg, and to get a league title in that period. Fair play to them. That was under Ronnie Dyler, of course. They've had some good young talent come out of there as well. Martin Odegaard, for example, is one. A couple of other lads in recent years. So. They are based in the city of Drammen, which is in the sort of southwest of Oslo, retain a strong rivalry with Mjøndalen. And I think, I'm not calling them a fallen giant by any means because, were they ever that huge anyway? But when we think about it, sort of a decade ago, they were on the cusp of becoming this title challenger in Norway, which isn't that long ago, really, is it? 10 years?
Well, I remember where I was 10 years ago, but... that's a story for another day. And what's the outlook for this club? Because they haven't really raised too many eyebrows in recent seasons, have they?
No, they haven't, and it feels like things have slided, and it's going to go one of two ways now. They're either going to go down, a bit like sort of what happened to Lillestrøm, who treaded water for a few years, and then eventually they've gone down, and then you sometimes need to kick up the arse again, don't you? Come back up. And I fear that is definitely a possibility for Strømsgodset if they're not careful, or they could kind of rebound because I see a lot of potential at the club. They've got a manager, Henrik Pedersen. We had a great interview with him on the channel. I think about 18 months ago now. Fantastic guy, and he had a vision for this club, and I loved what I heard. And I think tactically, he has a plan. He has a sort of philosophy. He's a 4-3-3 merchant. You're not going to see much difference there. He will have like a wing on one side and sort of an inverted wing on the other. He likes to sort of press quite a lot. One of the high pressing teams in the league, and you kind of know what you're going to get with them. They play some nice football at times. And I sometimes watch them. I'm like, what's going wrong? They have had a lot of bad injuries, and they've got already a key man out in Lars Jørgen Salvesen this season, but. Like I said, they've, in terms of the club itself, has got this history in recent times that they're well supported. Actually, they're not hugely supported, but the Marienlyst Stadium can have a really great atmosphere when it's full up, and they've got some good, passionate fans. It's an interesting place, and I think it can go in one or two directions. And this season's a big one for them. They need to keep players fit, and if Pedersen in his third season can finally fulfil this vision, then it'll be great. But on the other part of me worries, is it going to go like Tromsø did with Simo Valakari, where this kind of great potential is just washed away?
Yeah, I mean, looking at these last, 10 years or so of Strømsgodset, I'm just going to read you out their sort of finishing, places. In 2010, they finished in 7th. 2011, 8th. 2012, they finished 2nd. 2013, they won the title. So, this is a team who's got a recent history of winning. 2014, they finished 4th. 2015, they finished 2nd. And then it's taken a bit of a dip, hasn't it? 2016, they finished 7th. 2017, they finished 4th. and then 2018 13th, 2019 11th, and last season 13th again. This is a side that's got a recent sort of pedigree of winning titles, Steve, isn't it? And I mean, we only have to go back sort of, 10 years ago, as you mentioned, they were playing Atletico Madrid in the Europa League qualifiers, and also the likes of Sunderisca when they qualified in 2017, Hajduk Split. So they've got even a bit of a European pedigree to a certain degree in terms of qualifying for European competitions. And they're also 5 times Norwegian Cup winners. So this is, are they a bit of a sleeping giant here? Are they a big team? Are they well supported? And who would their kit is a little bit like, I was going to say Everton or maybe like sort of Tottenham away kit in the old Holston days. But who would you can compare them to in terms of, Premier League clubs? Who's their equivalent? Because you did mention, and you are right in saying that, the interview with Henrik Pedersen was very, very interesting on this Nordic Football podcast a few years ago.
Yeah, in terms of a club comparison, say a Premier League club, I think we've probably got to look for someone that has won the odd title down the years, right? But at the same time, is not maybe huge. They have this. You did mention Everton there in terms of the kit, and they do spring to mind as a possible comparison. Maybe as a bit of a sleeping giant as well. Everton could be one of those. Trying to think of someone else. Maybe Villa could be another sort of example from a decent enough size sort of urban area. But one of those two could spring to mind. They're the manager himself, like I say, he comes across really well. I like what he does. But fundamentally, his average points in the 49 matches in charge have been 1.10, which is way too low, I'm afraid, Jonathan. He really needs to step up this year and show this true potential. Like last year, 57 goals conceded. That's the third worst in the league. It's just not good enough. It's not going to cut it. And, the home advantage wasn't helped by the COVID. If they got the full crowds, you'd expect it better than second worst in the league. But they've got to improve that home record. It does concern me when fundamentally since he's took over, they conceded way too many goals, and whether that's the system, whether that's the personnel, they've had injuries, but that is definitely an issue for Strømsgodset and for Henrik Pedersen to work it out. But if he can solve that riddle, at the moment they're only brought in one new player for the season. That's Fred Friday. Is another reason I want to talk about Strømsgodset, because I've had people asking me about Fred Friday. I commented that his fantasy price looks very generous, and I had a few sort of Dutch guys responding to me, not if he plays to his AZ form, a guy from AZ Alkmaar. It seems that he completely flopped over in Holland, and some people are questioning whether he's ever going to be the same again. But Fred Friday's a really big signing for me. He was brilliant in the Eliteserien since he took over. They haven't added anyone else in midfield and defence, but they will have players back from long-term injuries in those positions. So almost like getting a couple of new guys in. I'd like to see them reinforce maybe one player in each of those areas. But they're an intriguing club. They go one way or the other for me. But it might be a good time to get on the bandwagon of Strømsgodset, because I think the ambition will be there long term, and they've got the they've won the title in 2013. There's a history here. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Fred Friday in a recent podcast, and I saw your tweet as well. You said he's a bargain for Eliteseiren fantasy, so I take it he could be in your team.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in my team, and I'm willing to commit to saying this guy will score a certain amount of goals, or I will do some sort of forfeit. To be honest, to work that one out. I'd be stupid.
Maybe you can sort of do something on a Friday. Some sort of Friday forfeit. Get you on this podcast singing the national anthem or something on a Friday.
Well, I won't be committing until the start of the season, knowing Strømsgodset says, look, he'll get injured for the rest of the season now. But intriguing player, and they're going to need some goals from him this season up front. But I believe he can get them certainly at least 10, probably knocking on the door 15 if he plays to the level that I know he used to in Norway, and is someone I'll be talking about certainly closing into the season. But yeah, interesting. We've got this rivalry with Mjøndalen, of course, a big one. They hate each other so much. It's actually quite a big match, one of the biggest derbies in the whole country. So that's if you like getting involved in sort of a big local toss-up with someone, just specifically one team, then that is definitely your sort of club that you might be going. Again, quite sort of Everton comparisons, isn't it, really? In that regard, or Villa, in fact, again. So, that's the sort of club I say Godset are, and they're an intriguing case, and I hope that helps sort of people get in a bit of a feel about the club.
Strømsgodset it is. So, interesting stuff. We've looked at Tromsø, we've looked at Strømsgodset, and nice little overview there of the two sides, and of course of Häcken and Norrköping. We've only got one more talking point in this podcast, and that is VAR, Steve. Because are you ready? Wait, how long have you got?
Well, when you told me that there might be a potential for VAR in Sweden, I was kind of a bit taken aback, to be honest. But is this a realistic possibility?
Yeah, so there's been a few developments in Sweden on that. Long story short, there's been a few votes held this evening, I think, even about VAR, and there's teams obviously at this moment in time they're kind of debating it, whether they should go for VAR in Swedish football and bring it in. It's been debated. It's been on the agenda for a while. And on Monday evening, a huge majority of members of EFK voted against it. So a motion was started, to vote it in. And basically, it was originally put forward that the club should sort of go for it and support VAR. But the club's members have come out and said, no, thanks. We don't fancy VAR. And, so basically, it looks like... it looks like it might not happen.
Would you personally say, is Sweden ready for VAR?
Well, basically, the verdict came through that's saying that, the question of VAR is, this is a quote from one of the, people involved in the vote, and it says that, it's good to have democracy where everybody has their say. I think the board maybe were in favour, but the members voted against it. And essentially, the comment was that we believe that the technicalities could work in future in football, but as it works today, it does not work well, and it strongly affects the match experience. And so, basically, kind of says that the passion and nerve is lost, and that's what EFK's new chairman Richard Bergling said to the Göteborg Post. So the feeling is that it's kind of maybe VAR will eventually come into Sweden, but at this moment in time, anyway, according to the EFK members, it wasn't something that they're in favour of in its current format, and probably support that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opinion in Norway. I don't think the Eliteserien is ready for VAR yet. The big sort of push towards it would be that some of the decisions in Norway are so poor, and some of the refereeing is so poor that maybe they need sort of a helping hand. Like, for example, there's a big decision in the playoff match that probably cost, it was a reason that Mjøndalen maybe got retained their status. Fine margins in big games like that can be crucial, and I've always been in favour of VAR in the biggest of all games. I just have. The stakes are so high. However, in a league like Eliteserien Allsvenskan, are the stakes really that much? And I think it would probably almost spoil it more than the advantages that it would bring in at this point in time, until VAR's maybe refined a bit. I quite enjoy watching Eliteserien. I enjoy watching French second division at the moment with no VAR. The game flows a lot better, and until there's a sort of better, more refined system and VAR has really smoothed out the best it can, I would say it's probably best avoided in Scandinavia, but I'm sure that others will disagree.
Yeah, I don't like VAR. I think it's my gut instinct when it started was that I wasn't a big fan. My reasoning was kind of that I felt that it takes away more from the game than it adds. I think it kills the celebration. You can't really celebrate goals. That was one of my biggest worries about it. Kind of just kills that emotion. And although there was a period of time where I thought actually this is working pretty well, I thought parts of the World Cup 2018 were sort of quite well integrated. But really, on balance, I just don't like it. I just don't think it adds a huge amount to the game. If I look back at the history of football, every major World Cup or sort of European Championship that you remember, or Champions League, if you went back and added VAR to it, I don't think any of the things are improved. I might be a bit biased on that in certain occasions, where your team maybe gets away with one, or your team doesn't get, or your team loses out because of one. But on balance, I look at it as like, I always think of the 2010 World Cup, and I look back on that World Cup and I think if VAR was around and Luis Suarez in that Ghana against Uruguay game, do you remember that game, Steve?
Yes.
If VAR should, I always think to myself, would VAR would that have been a good situation with VAR? And although I know, like, to me, it was like one of the biggest injustices I've ever seen in football, and I was fuming. Like I fumed about that for like weeks, to be honest. And I remember being so upset when it happened at the time. But when I actually look back and I think about it, Asamoah Gyan missed the penalty. Now, would I have actually wanted VAR to correct it and maybe, let's say the keeper was off his line, or, you look at, for example, Jerzy Dudek in the Liverpool, that Istanbul final. Jerzy Dudek's off his line about 2 yards in that final, actually, if you rewatch those penalties.
I hate that, by the way. I can't stand the goalkeeper thing. I think that's absolute bollocks.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually think about it, that World Cup in South Africa, the Luis Suarez incident was one of the biggest talking points in world football history, probably. It will go down in history forever. Do I want VAR to have ruled that out and it all have been nice and, nicely sorted out? Although the instinct to me says, yes, you want fairness, the answer is probably no. Maradona obviously passed away, the great Maradona, rest in peace. When we look back at Maradona's career, would we have wanted that handball to be ruled out because of VAR, to be honest? When we look back at Maradona's legacy, that is part of his legacy, isn't it? I mean, VAR to me is like counterintuitive to South America in general, because South American football is a massive part of South America is about, getting away with what you can, sort of just that sneakiness. And to me, that adds something to the game. Like you might not like it, but it's something different. It's like, that's the culture. I just think VAR takes away a lot of what we see in football. Obviously you get the right decisions, and maybe I'm being a bit romantic from that point of view, but I like having a bit of treachery in football. Decisions that drive people mad that you're talking about for years after that. And from my point of view, in terms of relating it to Allsvenskan and Swedish football, I can't. If I had to sit through sort of Kalmar Östersunds and you're there in -10, wait for a referee to sort of like double check for the 50th time an offside decision, I just think it's going to put fans off, to be honest. I'm not in favour of VAR.
The big problem is you can't really celebrate a goal. Even what looks like an obvious one, there's no problems with it. You just can't quite celebrate until the game's kicked off again, can you? It's just one of those things. I'm kind of used to it now, but it's not good. And I think some of the stuff that the goalkeeper on the line stuff, that's just minute details, isn't it? I think VAR, there's certain bits of VAR you can use, like red cards. I'm all for that, because at the end of the day, when someone gets sent off, there's a big break in play anyway, Jonathan, isn't there? So you might as well use it there, like mistaken identities and stuff like that. Goal line technologies work quite well, apart from one time. But yeah, unfortunately, it's here to stay now, isn't it? But does it need to be integrated into all the leagues worldwide? I'm not saying. I don't think it doesn't have to be. I don't think it does have to be. Maybe just the top leagues where there's way more at stake, millions more at stake, things like that. Or could it be integrated into a system where it's sort of like coaches' challenges, like NFL, where actually use the linesmen and referees to actually make decisions, and maybe a coach has like one challenge a game on something.
Well, the thing is, you say, should it be integrated in all leagues? If you're then creating a hierarchy of leagues, which further entrenches divisions in football. So I can't agree that, I think one of the most scandalous things I've ever seen in football so far was how there was VAR last season in the FA Cup, but only for certain teams. And then Swansea had a blatantly, good goal ruled out, which VAR would have ruled. I think there was Swansea v Manchester City where, there was no VAR, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. To be honest, if you're going to have it uniform in one competition, it should be for all teams in the competition. So I think you then end up creating a hierarchy. You then end up creating it's not an equal game then. So I think you have to bear that in mind. But for me, no, it just doesn't. As you said, it kills celebrating goals. there's already a question mark about the appeal of football in the long term. You know, is it appealing to younger viewers in general? And I think VAR just sort of makes it a little bit less appealing. You know, I think if I was younger and watching football, I'm not entirely sure I would be as into it as I would with VAR. I just think that we've had no fans for this season, but you can't really celebrate goals. And if you can't really celebrate goals, then I know you're a big cricket fan, Steve, but you're basically making football more like a sort of cricket experience. And I think that's counterintuitive to what fans want.
You can't celebrate, say, an LBW in cricket anymore because you can refer it and stuff. And yes, you kind of get used to it, but it's not. The thing with cricket is once teams have used their reviews up, then it goes back to the umpire. You know what I mean? And you're in a sort of a game where it's quite authentic again. So, yeah, I don't know. I certainly feel like it's not ready to be implemented in Scandinavia anyway. That's my personal feeling about VAR. And, you know, it's a debate that can go on. But, yeah, the celebrations, you can't even celebrate an absolute galazzo, can you? I remember watching an MLS game. I think it was San Jose Earthquakes. And some blokes on right back had an unbelievable hit. But there was like an offside infringement in the build-up, which was fairly minute. It was just slightly off. And I'm like, Jesus, you've chalked off an unbelievable moment. And it's just stuff like that we've lost in the game now. And yeah, it's just the year 2021, isn't it? And the sort of era we're in now.
Yeah, but you know, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, why should we bow down to these computers and stuff? I mean, I don't get this whole thing of it has to be there to stay. If it makes the game worse, it makes the game worse. And the argument about Scandinavia, I mean, I'm not even. You say that as if maybe they're lesser leagues, so they shouldn't have it. But to be honest, should it even be in the Premier League? I don't see it adding to the game. So the odd decision it gets right, and obviously you do get a slightly more. You know, overall, I think VAR actually in the Premier League is implemented quite well. I think it gets the majority of things correct, but it's the amount of time it takes, the boring sort of like lines being drawn, the long delays. As you say, goals that can get ruled out because something in the build-up happened 30 seconds before. There's just too many. Football's about emotions at the end of the day. It's about passion and romance, and you know, skullduggery is part of that, in my opinion. That's part of football. You know, it's an imperfect game. You know, and people love it because it's an imperfect game played by imperfect people. And you know, perfection isn't always, I don't think, the best. So that's my take on it. But it's interesting to see that in Sweden there's a bit of a, you know, I think I saw a tweet from Tobias Hussein, who we've had in this podcast as well, who said he was very happy that the board members voted against it. So that just tells you a little bit about the feeling at the moment in Sweden about VAR. There's a sort of a feeling that maybe they don't want it at this moment in time.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much rounds off the episode. A bit of a VAR debate there, which is interesting. And we'll be back again very soon. Certainly, hopefully Molde. Maybe there'll be a juicy quarter-final Europa League tie for Molde that we can look forward to in the next episode. You know, we've got a hope, haven't we? But yeah, we'll be back again hopefully next week to talk about more things in both leagues. The Allsvenskan season is fast approaching, and Norway's about 6 to 8 weeks away. So from this particular edition, I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, and before we go, I just want to give a big shout out to our Patreon followers. You know who we are. We'll be calling you out soon. But in the meantime, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you want to support us. And yeah, thanks a lot to those loyal supporters. Of course, hopefully we're going to give you some interesting stuff as the season goes on and continue the consistency. But yeah, let us know what you think about VAR as well on Twitter @Nordic Football. Are you in favour of it? Do you agree with the EFCOR fans? EFCOR board, sorry. Do you agree with myself or Steve? Or do you think we're talking absolute rubbish? Let us know on Twitter @NordicFootPod or at Twitter Meatman Soccer or at JF Football, FUTBOL for me or Steve. For this week's episode, that's about it. It's been a nice little overview of Norrköping, of Häcken, Tromsø and Strømsgodset, and of course, best of luck to Molde in this week's massive Europa League tie, and we'll see how they can get on. But for now, from me anyway, Jonathan Fadugba, it's been nice to be with you on this podcast, Steve, and I'll see you again very soon.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you around next time.